Hey, what is going on YouTube? It is the last Saturday of the decade, and we are going to wrap this Saturday up with a video in Node on how to connect to a MongoDB. There's a different video from the previous ones, which that's what I was aiming for, so we have accomplished that. This should be a pretty interesting video because MongoDB, any kind of DB, is used everywhere at this point, so it is good to know about MongoDB as it is kind of taking over right now compared to the relational SQL database. So that's what we're going to touch on is Mongo, and we're going to need to grab some things from just one thing from npm. Let's go ahead and install Mongoose. And it's gonna populate that, which it might not do anything for me because I already have it installed. So just overrode it if anything. But first you're gonna want to jump over to MongoDB and find your OS and hit download. And it will download to a file. Make sure you have that said file because you can access MongoDB from the command line, which you can either add it to your path or you can simply just go to that path /bin and just hit MongoDB to sign in. I'll go ahead and throw my path up to show you where that resides, and then you got /bin, so you can, once you're inside of that, you can go Mongo and it will bring you into the Mongo shell, and you can do things like show DBs. There we go. And I got my test one here, as you can see, test. And I'm going to access that by say use test. Switch to TB test, and then you can say show collections. And you see I have items in there, which we are going to use for this video. We're just going to create a simple item database that's going to hold a name and a price, but the price is not accurate because it's just going to hold integers. But anyway, let's jump into the code here. Let me clear out all my screen. There we go. We got this empty almost canvas. Not really. There's some stuff from previous videos because I might use this to connect to a website to, get it fully functional. But right now we're just going to connect to the database. We're going to add to the database, and then we're going to read from the database. So that is the objective for this video. So since we got Mongoose installed by npm, let's go ahead and bring Mongoose in. So we need a variable that is going to hold Mongoose. So var Mongoose is equals to require Mongoose. And then we're going to need to connect to now this database. So mongoose.connect. And then we are going to need to pass it this URL where the database resides. So MongoDB // localhost :/27017 /test. That's that database I showed you guys earlier. And then we need to pass this use new URL parser because it will complain and say it is going to be deprecated. And there's that. You get this localhost. Once you download MongoDB, you'll be greeted with a UI, and you can see all your collections and databases and everything. I can't show you that because it is not showing up for OBS. It does have hardware acceleration on most likely, but you can get your host from that UI. It will say host, and then it will have your host wherever it resides. So like mine is localhost 27017. Unfortunately, I can't show you that, but can at least get this working without it. So we're going to need a few functions here. So let me go ahead and save. So that we have, now that we have that, connect it. First, let me go ahead and run it. All right, so far so good. Just some deprecated warnings. All right, now that we got that squared away and up and running, we're going to need 4 functions that I'm going to create today, because we are going to create the schema for the database, insert items into the database, and then read from the database. That's going to be about 3 functions. Well, really 4, because you got to save the item to then add to it. But anyway, that's beside the point. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go. We need a function. Create a schema. It's going to take a DB database, and function create item. This is what's going to store in the schema. So we're going to need the item that will be created from the schema. Then we need a name and then a price. And a function save item, which will take an item. And then we need a function get item. I should say get items, because this will return all the items from the database. So then we take that item schema and pass it down. So now we have schema, create schema. This will be the first thing we need to do, since we can't do anything without it. It is basically an object that will hold whatever you tell it to hold. Basically, how I look at it is it's like almost like a JSON object, but not quite. Instead of like a relational database that has rows and columns and everything separated via tables and connected by keys and everything, Mongo just uses objects. So now that we're inside create schema, we're going to go db dot on if we have an error. So error, let me just go ahead and console log some generic error message. And then we can create our schema by saying var item schema is equal to new mongoose dot schema, and we need parentheses and then curly braces, and then this is where we set what our schema is going to hold. So we have a name, and then it's going to be a string, and we're going to have a price, which is a number. And then we need to return mongoose.model. And this is what we'll take. This is what we set it to. So an item will be set, or I should say, item schema should be set to item. So that's how we will be able to access our schema. So create schema is all written out. Next, we're going to create an item that we're going to use to store in our schema. So let's go ahead and write that. So var, I'll just use I equals new item. And then parentheses with curly braces on the inside, then name. And then we can say name, not very good. So let me make this distinctive. There we go. And then say comma price and set that to underscore price. And then we can actually access I by anything. So console log I dot price. And then we can go ahead and return I. You don't need this. This isn't, but this is a good way to see if it's working. Now we have create item up and running. And go ahead and save it. But first, let's go ahead and run it and see what we got. Let's go ahead and transition there. Node index.js. No errors, so that's good. But we really haven't even called anything, so nothing will show up. So let me go ahead and Control C out of that. So before I write save items, let's go ahead and write, let's call our create schema and create items. So var db is equal to mongoose.connection. Var item equals create schema. Then we pass down that db from db mongoose.collection connection. And then we can say var I is equal to create item. Then we pass down item. We just use the create that's passed back from create schema. And then we can say test, and then I'll just say a random price of $3. Let's go ahead and see if that works. It does not, so that's not good. That is my mistake. You cannot use console log in db.on. So what you will need, console.error.bind. Then we go ahead and pass it to console. Then we can go ahead and pass in our connection.error. Not dot, but connection error. So connection error. And that should do it. So let's try this again. Node index. There's our price of 3. So we have create schema. We created an item. The item now exists. So all we have left to do is save the item and get it back out. Let's go ahead and save it now. So that item we're passing down, so you can do item.save. And this takes a function which has an error. And you can set this to item. So if oops. Probably help if I close my parentheses here. So if error, go ahead and return console log Houston, we have a problem. Otherwise, you can print it out and say we saved it. Save successfully. Console log save successful. So now what item.save will do, will now save this item that we created to this schema. Then now all we have left to do is get items. So by doing that, we take that item schema that we created. We can do item.find, and this will find everything. This also takes a function which has a parameter of error, and then the item. And then you can just simply console.log the item out. Let me go ahead and add what we need to do to call these new functions we just created. So save item, pass down I, and then we can say get items, and then that will need that item from create schema. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Node index.js. Haha, typical. So we have an error here. Pretty simple to solve because that is an easy mistake I made. This error doesn't exist. So let's try this again. This is basically a live coding session we got going on. Node index.js. Boom, save successfully. There we go. We have an ID with the name test, the price 3. It truncates the zeros because we are using a number. So I said we're going simple and just using integers as a price, although you would never do that in real life. Bad practice. But anyway, that's beside the point. This is just to get the idea of how we connect Node to MongoDB. And that's what we did. So let's go ahead and bounce on out of our command line here. And we're going to do this again with a new item. And that's going to populate this database. And we'll be able to see it. It might take a try or two to get the console to print out because it is a step behind. But if you do look in the UI GUI of MongoDB, you will see the newly inserted item once you refresh it. So we got get items here, and we're going to create another item here. So var item number 2 is equal to create item. And then we're passing down that item again. So item, and then we're going to pass down test number 2. And then we'll say this one is $22, so we can see a change in here. And then say save item, and then item 2. And then we'll get items again, so so we can see the difference. So let's go ahead and see what we got. Go ahead and run it. 3 and 22. And like I said, it is a step behind. We would have to run this one more time to be able to see the newly inserted item. And there it is. 22 test 2. First test, first couple times we ran it. So every time I restart it, it does add a new one to the thing. But anyway, that is everything to writing out what we need to connect Node to MongoDB and MongoDB to Node. And you will wonder, this create schema is called every time, doesn't it? Delete everything, create a new one. The answer is no, because what Mongo schema does, it says, hey, if it doesn't exist, go ahead and create it. Otherwise, don't worry about it. There we go. You got to create the schema. You can put whatever you want in here. I will link some links down in the description, especially for getting MongoDB installed and probably the data types that schemas take. You can look at that. We'll also have a link to my website down below, which there might not be anything written there by the time you watch this and check that, but we'll see, hopefully. But create the item, save the item to the database, get the items. Boom, we're done. Hopefully you found this video informative, helpful, because we can take this to a whole new level now that we got our DB set up, because I can put it inside of our website thing here of Hello World, and we can do a whole bunch of things, which I'm plan on doing now. So we're going to do something like, a simple text box on the website, and then connect all that to Node, and then pass that on down to Node. definitely stay tuned for that and hit the subscribe button if you're interested. I do greatly appreciate it. If you found this video somewhat helpful, just in the slightest, I'd appreciate a thumbs up because it helps the channel grow. Thank you guys for tuning in. Probably a long one. Sorry about that. But I want to make sure I touched on everything that seemed of importance. There's a ton of other stuff that I have not touched on. MongoDB that we can probably touch on in the future. But this is the basic setup to get you up and going for your own projects. I'm out of here. See ya.